Kids, I'm going to talk to you about your literary device note-taking grid. This is a really important document you're going to be using pretty much the rest of the quarter. Doing this document correctly sets you up to write a beautiful essay. Doing it incorrectly will create a lot of problems for you when it's time to write the essay. So do it correctly from the beginning. The first thing you see here is your poem's title in quotes. And if I'm doing Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, I could just go to where I have my poem. I'm going to do Control-Shift-V to paste without the formatting. I could just go to where I have my poem and put that here. FYI, for this activity, we are, hold on one second. One of my kids wants my attention. He wants to tell me he's excited about something. He's got to wait just a couple minutes. Okay. So we're using the original version of our poem right now, and we're using the original version from here on out. We are no longer using the rewritten version. The rewritten version was an activity intended to make the poem boring and easy to understand. Now that we understand it better, we're going back to the original beautiful version. So this is my original beautiful title. This is my original beautiful poem. Poem's author, Robert Frost. I'll just hand type that. Now, here it says paste the text of your poem a line at a time. Insert numberless rows to indicate space between stanzas. Delete unused rows. Here's why you're doing that. When you cite a poem, you don't cite it using page numbers. That's different from citing, like, let's say, a novel. If you write an essay about a novel and you refer to something in the novel, you say, on page 32, the author writes, blah, blah, blah. Or you put the quote, and then at the end in parentheses, you put page 78. You can't do that in a poem, because if you were citing page numbers, it would always be like, on page 1, the poet says, blah, 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 blah. Later on page 1, the poet writes, blah, blah, blah. Like, that don't make no sense, right? Because the whole thing's on one page usually. So the way we cite poems is with line numbers. Now, one thing you could do is every single time I ask you to cite your poem, which is going to be a lot, you could just like count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a pain in the tush. So what I have you do instead is copy and paste your poem into this grid, and now you have numbered lines. So Control-C, Control-Shift-V, Control-C. I'll just do the first stanza so you see what Control-Shift-V. Control-Shift-V, as I said before, takes out the original formatting. If I just do Control-V, I get the font that's on the original page. Control-Shift-V makes it match the font of the new page. And Control-C, Control-Shift-V. All right, now I've got a little problem because I'm at the end of my first stanza. Remember, a stanza is a poem paragraph. And the fifth line is in the new stanza, see? But if I just put the fifth line here, I lose the stanza. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a numberless row to show that there's a space between these two stanzas. So here I tap with 2 fingers like bunny ears. I do insert row above, blam. All right. And then I'm going to go to line 5, Control-Shift-V, etc., etc. I'm going to continue all the way through. And then eventually I'll have 16 lines. And it says here, delete unused rows. So I actually start you with 20. I'll highlight when I'm all done, let's just like pretend I pasted it all. When I'm all done, I'm going to highlight the ones I don't need, tap with 2 fingers, and choose delete 4 rows. If I needed more, like if your poem's longer than 20 rows, I put my cursor here, and I have a couple options. One is to tap with 2 fingers and do insert row below. The other is to just put my cursor in the bottom right box and then hit tab. Whoa, nice. All right, some of y'all know that trick already. All right, so that's the first thing you do in your note-taking grid. If you scroll down, this is the place in the grid where you take notes. You're going to fill in these boxes as we discuss them together in class. So the yellow column says literary device. You're always going to fill in the boxes in this column, and this is where you're going to write the name of your literary device. So The first literary device we've talked about is figurative language. So here you're going to write whichever figurative language that you're doing for your assignment. Let's say you do onomatopoeia. Am I in there? Oh, I'm not typing. Oh, I see my computer's just slow. All right, so you're going to write onomatopoeia in there, except you're not going to spell it weird like I did. You're going to spell it. Okay. I'm going to spell it correctly. And then in another class or so, we're going to have notes on metaphor. And when we do that, you'll start a new row and you'll call it metaphor. And in a class that comes after that, we'll have notes on word choice. And when we do that, you'll start a row on word choice, and so on and so forth. Okay. So you always write in the yellow column. Every single time we do a new literary device, you write in the yellow column. Now, you've got the white section and the gray section. Every single time we do a literary device, you will either write in the two white boxes to the right, or you'll write in the two gray boxes to the right, but you'll never write in both. I have an example here. Here, my literary device is imagery. For this one, I wrote in the two white boxes. For onomatopoeia, I might write in the two white boxes, or I might write in the two gray boxes, but I'm never going to do both. Here's the sample literary device note-taking grid I attached to your assignment. If you scroll down and look at the bottom, you'll see, let's see. This student wrote in the white boxes for imagery, the white boxes for word choice, the gray boxes for personification, the white boxes for repetition. Now, how do you know whether you're writing in the white boxes or gray boxes that day? Here's how. You'll do the white column boxes unless we discuss a literary device that's not in your poem. Maybe I should change that wording. How about if we discuss a literary device that's in your poem? Because not every poem has every literary device, right? Like we talk about figurative language, maybe your poem has no figurative language. If we discuss a device that's not in your poem, you have to write in the gray boxes. Now, why? Why am I still making you do work if the literary device is not in your poem? Because let's say we're talking about onomatopoeia, which is a type of figurative language, and like 5 of the kids have onomatopoeias and 10 do not. Well, now there's work for 5 kids to do. They have to write about the onomatopoeias in their poem. And 10 of the kids like don't have to do any work and don't have to practice spotting onomatopoeias, and that's not very fair. So let's say we're doing onomatopoeia that day, but you don't have one in your poem. You're going to write in the gray boxes. Well, what are you going to write? You're going to pick a poem from this class set. See that hyperlink right there? You'll go over here. There are like 20 poems in here. And you're just going to like skim. I won't tell you exactly where to find an onomatopoeia, but I will give you hints if you ask me. And you're going to find a poem that has an onomatopoeia in it. And then you'll come back and write about that poem in the gray boxes. Oh, so what do you write? Well, whether you're writing in the white boxes or the gray boxes, it's the same both times. You write some evidence, and then you write how it makes the reader feel. You write some evidence, you write how it makes the reader feel. So, what is evidence? I say it right here. Quote the line or lines where this device appears in your poem and give the line numbers. And here is what that could look like. If I were doing imagery for stopping by woods on a snowy evening, lines 11-12, and then here's the quote from the poem. Here's / to indicate that's where that one line ends and another starts. I'll talk more about that later. Here's close quotes at the end of the quote. That's evidence. And if I were writing about a poem that wasn't mine, a poem that I got from the class set, I would still do the same thing. I would quote the line or lines where the device appears, and I would give the line numbers. The only thing I ask you to do additionally is name the poem. Like, which one are you doing? Honestly, I know all these poems, so I'll recognize it anyway, but it's more for you. So, okay, what do you do in the feeling column? you're going to write one of these sentences. And look how easy this is for you. I made you sentence templates. Here's one sentence template. Here's the other sentence template. You could literally just copy the template, Control C, go down, paste it, and then fill it in. This, and then in here you put your device, onomatopoeia, makes the reader feel, and then you put an emotion word. Or if that doesn't feel like it's going to work for you, you could do this onomatopoeia. Makes the reader feel, and then something describing an abstract noun. You see how, so you have two possible sentence templates you can use for your feeling sentence. I want you to use one or the other. I say here, write a sentence that sounds like one of these, but it's really important that you say the reader and not me, because the poet didn't write this for you personally. The poet wrote it with all people in mind. So you're trying to say, how would most people react to this? Now, why do I have these hyperlinked? Because sometimes it's tough to come up with emotion words. Sometimes it's tough to come up with abstract nouns. So if you're not sure how this device makes a reader feel, go look at this list of emotion words and ask, oh, that's my feelings matrix. I'm sorry, I thought it was an emotion word list, but it's actually way cooler. I love my feelings matrix. Okay, so feelings matrix is basically, you have to decide whether the feeling of the word is high or low energy. That's this y-axis, fast heart rate or slow heart rate, and whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling. And once you decide which of these four quadrants it's in, then you find the word that matches how it makes you feel. So here's this imagery from my poem. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. That's soothing. That's slow heart rate, right? That's not aggressive. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. I would say it's positive, good, not negative. So that imagery probably makes me feel one of these feelings. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. I'm going to say peace, maybe relaxation. What did I actually write over here? This imagery makes the reader feel peaceful, quiet, and gentle. You don't have to put three things. I just did. But okay, if you want to do the sentence that says this device makes the reader think about, follow this link and it will take you to a list of abstract nouns. So the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Let your eyes just skim over these. Makes me think about, well, makes the reader think about, and maybe something will jump out at you. It's possible you can just come up with an abstract noun, right? And it's possible you can just come up with a feeling. But these links are for kids who have trouble coming up with those words. You're going to do the same exact thing for your feeling sentence if you're writing about a class set poem. Same exact thing. Let's do figurative language, because figurative language is what you're about to do, right? Let's see. Figurative language, I think I'm asking you to either do hyperbole, onomatopoeia, or what was the other one? Or personification. I don't think I have any of those three in my poem Stopping by Woods. So let's say I do personification, and I'm going to do it about a class set poem. What I'll do is I'll write personification in that box, and hopefully it'll appear at some point. Spelled it wrong. And then I'm going to prepare to write in these two gray boxes because I'm writing about a poem that's not my own. I'll go find one over here. Here it is, class set of sample poems. And I'm going to skim until a lot of times personification is like nature stuff. Writers like to personify nature. I'm just going to look for some sort of example of an object acting like a person. And when I find it, I'm going to go back and I'm going to copy and paste, not hand type, that line. I'm going to do quote marks, and here's the line. and then close quotes. And then I'm going to say lines, whatever they were, let's say 2 to 3. Gosh, that's taking a long time. My computer's slow right now. Yeah, okay. So just imagine this is my quote. Oh, I got to put the poem. The name of the poem is blah, 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 blah. And then for my feeling sentence, I'll either write this personification makes the reader feel, or this personification makes the reader think about. And I'm just going to do think about, because in my imaginary example, I think that makes more sense. And I'm going to skim my abstract nouns. And let's say that my imaginary personification makes the reader think about wisdom. Yeah, like I see that word and it fits with what I have in mind. This personification makes the reader think about wisdom. And if I wanted to add more, I could. And this is basically exactly what I would write if I were writing about personification in my own poem, except if I were, I would be writing over here in the white boxes. And I wouldn't have to include the poem title. Anyway, when you're done with this literary device note-taking grid, I'll show you the sample one again. You will have like 7 rows. This person has like 4 or 5, imagery, word choice, personification, repetition, 4. You'll have like 7. Most of them will be on the white side. Those are rows about your own poem. A couple of them will be on the gray side. And then when we settle down to write our literary essay, the content of your literary essay is going to come from here. You're not going to have to compose sentences out of thin air when you write your literary essay, because you will already have written those sentences here. What you're writing here in the note-taking grid is the content that will eventually go in your literary essay. That's why it's really important to do this correctly from the beginning. All right, so I hope this explains how to use your note-taking grid. Even though it's a long thing and it looks complicated, I promise it gets easier every time you do it. Okay, have a good one.